It's time to take a vacation. Where to? Well, let's make a place. Hey guys, MasakoX here, and welcome to another installment of our Builder series. If you're not familiar with the concept, over the last 2 videos or so, we've been talking about ideas about creating new types of things based on familiar items from the Dragon World. Now, when it comes to locales, Dragon Ball Super did actually really open our eyes to potential new destinations to go. I mean, we're not just talking about the occasional planet or a different part of Earth. We're talking about different universes here. The Omniverse is now open to us. And that is all the way up to basically the top dog's place. The place that is basically a kanji house riding on top of a massive blue jellyfish. I'm still blown away by that to this day. The previous 2 iterations of this series mainly focused around characters. We first started building a bad guy, and then came up with some ideas for their potential minions. There was the fearsome Lord Zaidan and his band of merry minions that was surrounded around the derivation of different types of construction materials. Because this is Dragon Ball, we gotta have some kind of name puns. If you wish to catch up with the specific details, you can check out links to both videos in the description and up top. So now we have some opponents for Goku and company to fight against. Cool. It would be nice for them to have somewhere else really cool and different to actually fight in, instead of just basically fighting in the same wasteland for the nth time, or maybe fight in the Arctic, maybe fight in some greenery. Oh, actually, now that I think about it, a jungle. Wouldn't it be cool for them to actually fight in the jungle, having to use the area around them to their advantage or disadvantage or something? That could be cool. Fighting in the Amazon. Okay, well, where exactly, Masako? Well, I mean, I can say one thing's for sure. Definitely not something like this again. One of the biggest complaints of the Frieza saga was the fact that Namek was such a boring place. Don't get me wrong, the Frieza saga and the Namek saga were truly compelling and fascinating arcs. They were great tour de forces. But the location? After the fact that we found out that space is actually a thing and that we can actually go into space, you think we'd come up with somewhere really fascinating or interesting to go. But no, Namek's just Earth with a green sky and round trees. And especially when you take into account the fact that fake Namek looks more compelling, and that is the only time I would say that fake Namek is better than anything. With the advent of 11 new universes to explore, we basically have carte blanche to do anything we want. Come up with something crazy like lava worlds or Technicolor vistas, or as I said before, some kind of jungle world where there's no open prairies or flatlands. You're basically having to fight the land itself as well. Okay, so what's Dragon Ball Super done for us thus far? For the most part in Super, we've actually been on Earth or different variations of it, but nevertheless we have actually travelled to different parts. There is of course the worlds of the gods of destruction, Beerus and Champa. They are fantastic worlds, with Beerus's one derived from Egyptian architecture, only upside down and different colours and just really wacky. Then of course there's the alternate Earth of future Trunks. It's completely ravaged and green and drab, and basically, if you remember a first-person shooter from the mid-2000s, you feel right at home here. You can almost say it's like Fallout 3. I just set the world on fire. Then of course there's the world of Void. Despite the concept being really boring on paper, just a flat surface and clouds, what we got was something imposing, and it kept evolving over time. The architecture changed with every episode. Despite the material meant to be indestructible, it changed. It became really hilly and rocky. You could hide in different places one episode, then they're gone in the next one. And then of course, towards the end game, it was destroyed completely and we had to fight in some kind of space. It was blown away with the clouds, and it kept changing. It wasn't the same thing for 30 episodes. Had that been the case, I think we would have been in major trouble from losing complete and utter interest in Super. Then of course there was a brief pit stop on planet Sadala of Universe 6. We got a brief idea about its surroundings like we see here, as well as a couple of tidbits of Saiyan architecture. Now if you remember from the last part, we were considering using the likes of Dozer, basically our equivalent of Harudagan, as one of the ultimate resources that Lord Zaidan can use in his quest to try and destroy Sadala. From that video, we deduced that the minions would be able to conjure up some kind of magic to create a Dozer based on the resources and materials of the planet they're about to conquer. So you've got these mountain ranges here at Sadala, the purple trees, they're incorporated into this Dozer's design. So you could say that every single Dozer is not one and the same. There are certain differences. Their attributes might change. They might be stronger, they might be weaker, they might be faster. They could be just all the more tough. So this Dozer would be truly unique, and actually in a way kind of ironic. The thing that's actually destroying the planet is derived from the materials that actually make the planet. It's effectively saying stop hitting yourself. This place would be a really cool locale to fight against Dozer, as it's a nice little callback to the moment when Kaba, Kale and Caulifla were training before the Tournament of Power. Yeah, granted, most of that was general wasteland, but it was still a place that we remember, so you go like, oh hey cool, I remember that place. Now when it comes to the Saiyan cities as it were, we've not really seen much of that at all. For the most part, all we've seen are places that Saiyans don't tend to congregate in huge vistas and skyscrapers, at least to our knowledge. The most notable example thus far is what we see from Renso's house, who's meant to be an elite guard. Instead of this being a massive vista or some kind of apartment, it's mainly just a hut with some very notable features. They're all tiny little architectural quirks and oddities, something that feels really much at home, quite rural actually. This might actually imply that the Universe 6 Saiyans are much closer to nature than previously thought. Much more so than the Universe 7 Saiyans, who tended to just live in mud huts for the longest time, until Frieza came along and they suddenly evolved within 20 years. In fact, with those tree platforms there, Renso's house looks more like an elven house almost. In fact, if you were to push me, I'd actually say it doesn't look out of place from something like Hobbiton. Since we haven't seen a really modern city on Universe 6 Sadala yet, we can actually be rather creative here. So instead of the typical skyscrapers and vistas that we would associate from cities, maybe Saiyan cities are built into the trees. Each dwelling would reflect the personality of their occupants. They would be individual instead of generic. Again, the Universe Saiyan big vistas after Frieza came along, they all look the same. Because remember, these Universe 6 Saiyans are thriving to have these huge structures blended into the nature of their own planet like they're in harmony. It's kind of like the Wookiees from Star Wars. Yeah, I think that might be a bridge too far. All jokes aside, I think after all of this and talking about Saiyan dwellings, it would be also really cool to see King Sadala's own palace. Now this wouldn't be just your typical palace, it wouldn't look really ornate or anything, or at least not on its own. I believe that King Sadala's dwelling should actually be carved out of the biggest tree of Sadala. You can have several offshoots off the main trunk of the tree. The branches could be almost like corridors or something like that, just to use something different in Dragon Ball, to truly show that these Saiyans are totally different from the Universe 7 Saiyans. It would also be a really good location for some climactic battles throughout the entirety of the arc. This could be part of maybe Lord Zaidan's minions' first assault on the planet. They could be trying to take out King Sadala, but our friends are there to try and stop them. Having that palace there would be truly special. Much more special than the likes that we got during Frieza's reign on Universe 7 planet Vegeta. But let's touch back on the Universe 7 architecture just for a moment. Despite it looking rather intriguing and imposing, it doesn't look very Saiyan to me. And yes, granted, I think King Vegeta would want it to look imposing and menacing and very, very structured and futuristic, but it doesn't really hark back to the heritage of the Saiyan race. They're proud of their Saiyan bloodline. You'd think they'd want to show it. To me, this just seems like a blueprint they could have acquired from Frieza. Just say, oh monkeys, just build it like this and everything will be fine. We'll do it on the cheap, eh? It just resembles any kind of dwelling you could find on any planet that Frieza had conquered and sold. Other than that, you just change the sky color a little bit and you could be on a different planet within seconds. I mean, look, Frieza Planet 79 right here. The architecture is basically the same on planet Vegeta. Maybe there's just a few tweaks here or there given the materials they might have had, or maybe the oversight, or maybe what the original dwellers have actually added to it. But on the whole, they're basically the same. Huge, curvy, white buildings with just some dots for windows, and that's it, in clusters as well. But okay, let's get back to Lord Zaidan. We mustn't forget about his needs, because any kind of self-respecting villain in Dragon Ball needs to have some kind of evil lair and headquarters. Are we thinking like along the lines of a castle maybe, like Garlic Jr.? Maybe some kind of laboratory, like Dr. Wheelo? Well, no. We're gonna have this guy being pretty mobile if he wants to conquer Universe 6. So, much like Frieza that we talked about, I believe that Lord Zidane would have a spaceship. But not just any kind of spaceship, because despite Frieza's rather imposing and iconic and memorable craft, it doesn't look really intimidating. It looks just like a giant enemy crab or something. Now don't get me wrong, it was very remarkable for its time and it's in keeping with Frieza's style and aesthetic, but if you just took that ship and gave it to Lord Zidane, it wouldn't really fit. This transport has to be massive, not just for Lord Zidane himself, but for his minions, his troops, basically any kind of craft you could have. Or maybe that's where they keep all the successful Dozers. Oh, imagine that. Goku and his friends having to fight multiple Dozers. If the Dozer on Sadala doesn't work, just send in the Dozers! Just like all these kaiju on planet Sadala! Whoa! So while the Saiyans of Sadala are very much in touch with nature and based on their architecture, maybe a parallel could be that Lord Zidane really focuses on constructive materials like rubble and rock, that kind of stuff. So what better thing to do while you're out in space? Just carve out an asteroid and make that your ship. It's just basically a giant asteroid. Not only is it huge, but it could also blend in. You could do a sneak attack right there and anywhere would have very little warning. Not only is this transport good to actually transport things and be an evil layer, it's also rather versatile in terms of scenery, because our heroes could actually fight on top of it, because somehow our heroes are able to actually fight in the upper atmospheres of planets, go figure. You could also fight inside of it because it's just like any other type of spaceship, and as a last resort, if Lord Zidane's not getting his way, he could just turn the asteroid into the planet, crash land into it, and destroy everything. That's way more effective than just a piddly little self-destruct button. Okay, so we need one more location to really complete this scenario. So remember in the previous stories that we talked about the reason why Zidane's on Sadala is to try and destroy a power source and make sure that no one else can use it, so Sadala has to be punished? Well, how about we have the locale being where this power source is, in this kind of area where it's a containment field essentially. And also, it's not just a cool backdrop where it doesn't really impact the fighting itself, it would, because this power source is thoroughly unstable. If you get too close to it, you could be instantly incinerated. So our heroes have to be very careful about what they do. One wrong move and they could be toast. Something that would really dwarf our heroes and villains. It wouldn't just be like a tiny little thimble of power or energy. No, this would dominate the majority of the planet once unearthed. You get some spectacular long shots and vistas and backgrounds, and it was just like, all our heroes would be tiny little ants. So yeah, there we go. We got our baddie, we got our minions, and now we got some locations for them to all actually interact in. What next for this story? Well, tune in next time to our next Builder episode, and maybe we could take this a little bit further. Actually, vote in the poll above here and see whether you'd actually like to see this fully fleshed out as some kind of story. Maybe it can be its own little mini movie. Who knows? So what do you guys think? Do you like what we're doing with the Builder series thus far? Tune in next time to find out what we're going to be doing. But until next time, guys, be sure to like and subscribe. Peace!